All right, well, good evening, everyone. Welcome from the SIR Medical Student Biodesign and Innovation Committee. It's our 2020 Biodesign Competition Face-Off. Our theme this year is Global Health and IR, and our two finalists are Albany and Yale. So just a brief overview of our competition. So we did initially begin in the fall with 14 teams. Ultimately, we got down to 8 complete submissions, which did involve a visual abstract as well as a written submission. Those 8 submissions were ultimately judged by 16 attendees across the country. We then took those 16 reviews and ultimately whittled it down to, again, our 2 finalists tonight. And those are Albany Medical College, which will be presenting LiveEgo, cutting edge equipment tracking system, as well as Yale School of Medicine, who will be presenting Easy Biopsy, a low cost, reusable core needle biopsy device for low resource IR environments. So we do have 7 judges that are with us tonight live. And again, the theme being global health and IR, I'd like to invite all of our judges to quickly say hello and where they are practicing. And we'll just go down the list.
Hi, I'm Susan Shamimi. I'm in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania.
Hi, everyone. Aaron Fishman here from New York, Mount Sinai.
Hi, everybody. Pratik Shukla from Rutgers in Newark, New Jersey.
How's it going? Dan Sheila. I'm in Providence. I'm at Brown University.
Hi, it's Miles Conrad from UCSF.
Hi, it's Andrew Kesselman from New York City, and I'm at Cornell.
All right, well, wonderful. Thank you again to our judges. And just a few more details in terms of the overall format of our face-off tonight. So we'll be going in alphabetical order, so that we'll be starting with Albany Medical College. And we will be starting with 10 minutes for an intro and pitch. Teams can use this time any way they like. And then at the end of those 10 minutes, we will ultimately be proceeding to Q&A. We'll begin with questions and comments from our judges, and then any time left over during those 10 minutes will be yielded to any other attendees who do have questions for our teams. In terms of questions for our teams, we'll be using the chat function. So for any of our attendees out there tonight that would like to ask questions, please use the chat box within GoToMeeting. And then additionally, for the teams that are going to be presenting, please have at least one of your team members monitoring that chat box. And if we do have time, we'll hopefully get questions as we proceed. Great. So at this point, I will hand over the screen to Albany, and we will get to see a little bit about what they put together. Just a minute.
Hi everyone, my name is Navan Song. I am a first-year medical student at Albany Med, repping the Albany Med team, which is comprised of Arun, Sam, Peter, John, Sarah, and myself. We are absolutely honored and delighted to show our solution for the 2020 Biodesign Competition, LiveEgo, a cutting-edge equipment tracking system. This is just a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. So to start out, our team thought about the ways that IR could be a part of the solution to global health initiatives. Nonprofit humanitarian organizations, such as Rad Aid, bring radiology services to sites in over 30 countries around the world, especially to resource-poor areas. The IR sector within Rad Aid is rapidly growing to meet global needs for IR services. Rad Aid and other like organizations, such as Radiologists Without Borders, deploy volunteers and ship equipment to these sites. One can imagine that this requires a great deal of operational and logistical organization. These resource-poor sites abroad, in the initial stages of, say, developing IR programs, may rely heavily on donated equipment. which must be tracked, transported, and cataloged by volunteers through a completely manual process that may be prone to error. Furthermore, as these practices at these sites have grown, there have been discrepancies in equipment supply and demand for these radiology services. So to avoid shortages that impact procedural availability and ultimately patient care, it is important that these organizations have a streamlined, easy-to-use system of equipment tracking, as organizations like RADAID are seeking to expand its mission of bringing radiology services to even more underserved resourced areas. Here is a screenshot of a current inventory system that they might be using. It is a spreadsheet in a Google Sheets that is manually entered and updated by volunteers ad hoc, as mentioned. So there are a lot of stakeholders that our solution involves. Humanitarian organizations like RADAID and Radiologists Without Borders, and as mentioned, making sure that patients receive quality radiology services in underserved areas is the ultimate bottom line. Volunteer physicians, techs, and other members of care teams should be able to spend more time in the field providing vital services and less time updating inventories or worrying about equipment shortages. We also believe that this is going to be a major way to increase industry participation. As mentioned, a lot of equipment is donated, mostly from hospitals, but there's a huge opportunity to facilitate donations from various vendors and companies and establishing a proper supply chain of equipment. So our design process began with lots of informational interviews with RADAID volunteers and physicians from Radiologists Without Borders to understand their current equipment tracking process. We then refined and distilled everything into flow diagrams with relevant stakeholders. And as you can see, it became abundantly clear that the biggest need was to centralize all of the tracking and inventory data with all the inputs, outputs, and stakeholders involved. And finally, from here, we identified pain points in the process and areas for optimization so we could build a tool that would meet the specific needs of end users. And again, this is the current system that they're using shown in this slide. So to that end, the solution that we designed and built is a comprehensive data platform. This includes a scanner app that works on both iPhone and Android, a database to digitally store equipment information, and a suite of dashboards. All of these components are completely free and thus accessible to resource-poor sites around the world. The scanner app itself is easy to use and provides real-time updates to the inventory database from these users and can work offline where there are areas with limited internet access. The dashboard suite has a live connection to that database, allowing users such as those at RADAID headquarters to dynamically filter and explore their entire network of sites, their current inventories, and other relevant equipment information. This fully integrated system will allow users to quickly identify gaps and operational issues and track trends across the entire network. And we believe this is a system that can scale up with RADAID and other organizations as they continue to expand their global reach. So how might this compare to the current RADAID system and inventory softwares that many in the audience may actually be familiar with, such as HiIQ? We believe that Levigo provides a variety of powerful functions like HiIQ, but at zero cost to the user like Google Sheets. This lowers the barrier for budding IR practices and under-resourced sites to access sophisticated digital systems, even offline. One advantage of a software like HiIQ, though, is its preloaded library of vendor barcodes, which is both proprietary and expensive. However, HiIQ is built for the high throughput of a large IR suite with thousands of items, while Levigo is currently designed to handle lower throughputs of equipment shipped through humanitarian organizations to developing IR practices. However, we are currently scaling up our system in order to be able to fully replace an IR inventory software as these practices continue to grow. And actually, the more that Levigo is used, the more our database gets populated with vendor items over time. And in addition, with the smartphone interface, we can collect GPS data from an iPhone or an Android to give real-time locations for items, which will become clear why that's important later. So just a quick demonstration. This is based on actually how we first piloted the system with a volunteer radiologist from Albany Med. Suppose you're an IR who volunteers for RadAid and you just received a donated ultrasound that's going to be a crucial piece of equipment for your upcoming trip, service trip to a RadAid site in Arusha, Tanzania. So this is what the app would look like when you open it up. You can start by tapping the scan button at the bottom, and the scanner opens up and you simply point it at an equipment's barcode or QR code, and an entry is created for that scanned item populated with the barcode, where you can enter the name for the equipment, assign a type through a drop-down menu, in this case ultrasound, and add date of expiration and other fields that you see here. Since this is an inventory system, we're also able to update the number of items that you might have used, the number added. In this case, we're adding 1 to the Arusha inventory. And also we can update the shipping status. In this case, it's stocked and ready to be shipped for this particular volunteer. So once you go back to the main menu of the app, you just simply refresh, and the entry automatically updates the cloud-based database. And as you can see, all the fields that were entered by the user are now in that database with an updated quantity. So here is a view of the dashboards that are built on a live connection to the database that you just saw. On the left, you have dynamic filters that would allow, for example, a resource manager at RadAid or Radiologists Without Borders to make data-driven decisions, such as where equipment may need to be prioritized within their network of sites. So for example, if you filter by site like Arusha and you click on Arusha, you can see that that site's current inventory updates on the right. You can also filter by shipping status to see what are the items that are currently shipped or stocked. And you can also filter by the type of equipment, for example, tubes. The map itself is also filterable to give a quick summary of a given site's inventory. And finally, when you go back to the main view, you can see that the ultrasound that we entered previously has indeed been updated in our dashboard. We can see where it was supplied from, in this case, Albany, and where it's destined for, which is Arusha, on the level of an individual piece of equipment. So we're extremely excited by how much traction we've already gotten with this system. In addition to scaling it up, we would like to tailor our app to user-specific requirements, such as building a volunteer request portal or a portal for suppliers to match those requests through the platform. And by increasing the network of suppliers, we can increase resource sharing across sites, and also travel and costs can be optimized, and therefore cost savings. We also believe that over time, as we collect more and more data, we can start to predict demand at certain sites and analyze trends in equipment utilization so that these growing IR suites can better budget supplies that they might be buying at that point, and also apply technologies and techniques such as machine learning to predict these supplies and demands. Finally, we're actually currently looking into adapting the system for coordination of medical supply donations and logistics to various local sites as a part of the COVID-19 response. Our goal is to adapt LeviGo to create a contact-free scanner and centralized registry and distribution system so that doctors and healthcare workers on the front lines can get the PPE and medical supplies they need. Again, this is our LeviGo team, and we'd like to acknowledge and thank our collaborators from Albany Med, from Radiologists Without Borders, RadAid, and also the SIR Medical Student Council for putting on a great event. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Nilan. At this point, I think we can open it up to our judges. So to our judges, any questions or comments about this project?
Hey, this is Andrew. I just want to say that was a great presentation. I did have one quick question. So if I had something in stock, let's say I had like a set of catheters, maybe 5 of them that I wanted to send to a site, but I hadn't picked the site yet. Could I mark it as all sites, and are they able from the site to request those products that they see that are now available in stock?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, if I can scroll down, we have this field called shipping status. So let's say you have those 5 catheters and you don't know which site you want to send them to yet. You just list them as stocked, and whoever has access to this data knows that there's now 5 catheters available for whatever site needs it. And that's how you can kind of match what's available and stocked on sort of like the supplier end and what's needed on the site end. So yeah, we absolutely have that capability to sort of create almost like a distribution center of equipment.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This is Susan Shamimi. I think this is awesome, and it's going to be very helpful for a lot of groups and a lot of places that need more help with equipment and things. But 2 questions. One, what do you think are some barriers to use of this? And also, when people start using it, what kind of things do you anticipate them need troubleshooting with, or like issues they might come up with using it?
Yeah, so I think as mentioned, we tried to make sure that this had a very low barrier to like entry. For example, it's low cost or no cost. It's easy to use. The end user kind of can just work with a really nice interface. But as mentioned, for more sophisticated softwares like HiIQ, they're more designed for, massive databases and throughputs like ins and outs through the app. And this system isn't necessarily like tried and true for handling like the entire IR inventories for every single site, for example. So I would say the biggest thing to troubleshoot and the next step for our team is to actually just make sure that this system can scale up with these IR suites at these different sites. And in terms of just what an end user might troubleshoot, there might be, for example, multiple barcodes or barcodes from vendors that change every few months and those kinds of variations. So we anticipate that this is going to be an iterative process, and we'll make sure that we address all those concerns and troubleshoot on the back end so that, again, this tool can grow as these practices grow as well.
Hi, it's Aaron Fishman. Question.
Yeah.
By the way, thank you for that presentation. It was really great. I guess my only question is what's sort of preventing you from not just using this for small rad aid, small practices, but why could this not develop into a complete replacement for something more expensive?
Right. So the main limitation is the app. We haven't really been able to like test it on like being able to store like a certain like thousands of items. As you saw in the example, there were only like 50, and you multiply those 1,000 items by however many sites. So it's more on the app end, but in terms of an actual like database, it's cloud-based and we own it, as well as the dashboard that's built on that database. So those are components that are absolutely ready. It's the scanning the app that we really haven't tested at that high of a capacity, and we actually are looking to build it out to handle that. So that's sort of the main limitation that we're anticipating.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Hi,
I think that. Oh, go ahead.
Miles Conrad. Oh, just one question. So this is offered at a very low cost or no cost currently. That's correct, right?
Yes, no cost currently.
And then, but if it starts being used by hospitals in whatever part of the world and they start making money, are you going to then charge for it, or obviously there's for-profit practices that'll be happy to have your free software. How do you deal with that and recoup costs?
Right. So I think we're currently going down the road of having this be a nonprofit. You know, it's important to us that like these sites might be like for profit, but it's sort of in under-resourced areas. And if this tool can be a part of sort of like lowering the barrier for these sites to grow, then that's absolutely the direction we want to go. And by going the nonprofit route, I mean, we'll be looking for grants, we'll be making sure that we're kind of covering the costs on our end. And if it makes sense to charge a low cost in the future, that is something that we're willing to explore as well. But for now, we'd love this to be as low cost as possible and nonprofit, so that it can help as many people as possible at the beginning.
Well, I commend you for it, and it was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Fabian here. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Great. Great presentation. So I think the key for you is really going to be to strike a balance between the detail level required for product entry and ease of use. Okay. And if you can strike that balance, then I think it's going to work really well. But it's a difficult balance to strike, because on the one hand, you want to collect the maximum amount of information you can get. On the other hand, you don't want to make it too complicated. And then I have a question. Do you see any risk that current commercial providers could sabotage the system in any way?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. They almost already do try to prevent something like this by, like, they kind of recycle or change their barcodes every so often, and they sell, you know, their proprietary vendor information to softwares like HiIQ, which is sort of included in their high premiums. So they almost black box the database portion of things. But we do think that as of right now, we're sort of circumventing those issues. But by sort of detaching the like specific vendor information that might pop up when you do scan, this can use any barcode. You can generate your own barcodes if you want, and sort of take the vendor out of it, because, you know, a catheter is a catheter at this length. You know, if companies or vendors, particular ones, don't particularly matter to the user, we can absolutely kind of work around that. But other than that, we don't necessarily see a way for like commercial, I guess, sabotage of this product. And we think that we're operating in a different sort of capacity and use case than what a software like HiIQ might be offering at the moment.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, great. Any other questions from our judges? All right.
Hey, this is Dan Shilo, actually. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was muted on my phone. So, Navan, it's an amazing presentation, and it's an amazing software, too. My question kind of echoes what everybody else said. I want to take it kind of from the opposite perspective. Is there any way you guys can get an allowance or some sort of humanitarian exemption to get that database? Because, like I said, like everybody else, the burden here may be in data entry and in duplication and the nuance there. And just like pharmaceutical companies have discounts for humanitarian interventions, have you approached HiIQ? Have you approached anyone about maybe even getting some sort of humanitarian exemption for their proprietary softwares or databases to integrate it into the app?
Yeah, that's actually a great thought. We haven't like yet approached HiIQ or pharmaceutical companies, but we are absolutely looking for grants and exemptions to grow this practice. That's definitely the next step, so that we can proceed with scaling up the app. But yeah, that's a great idea.
All right, thanks, man.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, guys. We're just about at the 10-minute mark for the Q&A. So at this point, we will go ahead and share our screen with our finalists from Yale and move on to our next submission. But excellent work, Team Albany. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you to the SIR and the Biodesign Committee for putting in the hard work and making this happen even in this difficult time. I do want to mention that we have changed our name since the previous submission. We are now called RECOR. So I'll start by telling you a bit about the context of our project and how the team came together around it. In 2017, Yale residents and attendings visited Tanzania and worked with residents there to evaluate an IR training program. Over the next year, multiple training teams from the US and Canada rotated through, and they began to ramp up their work and did many first-in-country life-saving procedures. However, there are still significant barriers to further developing the IR capacity there. There really isn't an available supply chain for IR equipment. It's too costly to source a lot of their equipment directly. They rely, as we've heard now, from donated materials and their ability to reuse them. In this environment, core needle biopsy guns specifically that were low cost and reusable were highly desired. So in June 2018, two Tanzanian residents, Eric and Ivan, came to present research, and I met with them for the first time. That's me in the middle. I think I just finished my board exams at that time, so that's why I'm smiling. And Fabian also and Ivan, who have been essential in working on the initial stages of this project. Our team has continued to grow. David Dupuy, a fellow MD, MBA student, and Walter Bircher, our mechanical engineer, who has been the mastermind of all of our prototyping work. Additionally, Igor Latic, a Yale IR attending that I've worked with many times, and Murray Ash, who most recently joined our advisor board. So to give you a brief overview of why we think increasing access to biopsies is important, cancer diagnoses start with biopsies. Early cancer diagnosis is estimated to save up to $26 billion in healthcare spending just in the US annually. And for nearly all types of cancer, the 5-year survival rate is substantially higher if disease is caught at an early stage. So early diagnosis can and does save lives. Here we have visualized data from the American Cancer Society global data set, filtering for cancers that are diagnosed by core needle biopsy. We can see that per capita incidence rates are much higher in developed countries, while in low and medium HDI countries or low development countries, they have much lower reported cancer incidence than we predicted by their population size. This is partially due to underdiagnosis. So this gap goes towards representing the potential scope of increased biopsy access and of earlier stage cancer detection. But current biopsy devices are price prohibitive for a lot of developing nations. Let me show you how RECOR can solve this problem. Current biopsy devices have unique pros and cons. However, their limitations effectively restrict access for low resource hospitals. Plastic disposable devices have high incremental costs. You have to pay for the entire needle and device, basically, for every biopsy you take, and they have large stock space requirements. Metal reusable devices, they're more cost efficient in the long run, but they have very high upfront price and the need for an ongoing servicing and repair relationship. RECOR brings the best of both of these worlds with a low upfront price, low per procedure price, and no servicing requirements. RECOR is a reusable core needle biopsy gun. This is an old mock-up. It's probably going to look quite a bit different than this. Manufactured from a sterilizable plastic. It is lightweight and radio transparent, allowing easy use even in delicate fluoroscopically guided procedures. It will be compatible with a wide range of attachable coaxial needle biopsy systems. After use, the needle can be removed and discarded, and the device can be sterilized and restocked. This slide just demonstrates the competitive space of our biopsy device. On the horizontal axis, we have the variable of value, which is a combination both of the upfront and per procedure cost. And on the vertical, we have downtime and servicing needs. So servicing requires an existing supplier relationship, and it can incur costly additional repair fees down the line. These pros and cons, we've already sort of discussed them in the previous slide, but RECOR combines the best of these to have the low upfront cost, low incremental cost, and no servicing requirement. So our models on manufacturing show that at high manufacturing scale, we can produce a handle for approximately $4, and each needle plus the required plastic attachment for that needle for approximately $1. This comes out to a total unit price of $5. And if we use a 10 times multiplier, which we've been quoted as common in this industry, for manufacturing cost to the total cost of production, including overhead, we come up with these costs of $10 and $40 for the needle and base respectively. And we've modeled some potential prices that these might be sold at. So this is an important graph to explain, and if anyone has questions on the end, I'm happy to take them on this. It really shows where our device can create value. So the dashed white line here is the per procedure cost of a conservatively priced Timno biopsy device, disposable device. So the other colors each represent each of the other reusable devices and their associated upfront costs. So we see it would take 143 biopsies done on the Bard Magnum device before you can effectively spread out that initial purchase price enough so that your overall expense is lower than versus using the disposable for every biopsy. If we zoom in, we can see a range of 3 to 14 biopsies is required with our device, depending on which final purchase price you choose, before it becomes more cost effective than a disposable, before it goes below this dotted line. We believe this range is well within our engineering tolerance to deliver. So based on the purchase price of a $50 unit and a reusable rate of 50 to 100 times, we can deliver significant annual cost savings to a variety of institutions. So 40% cost reduction across the spectrum, from our estimated biopsy volume of 75 per week here at Yale to the 5 that they do in Tanzania. And we have shown some of this data in our designs to physicians on the ground who are all really excited, not only about the application of this to these developing programs, but also in their home institutions. Murray Ash has been both the president of the Canadian Interventional Radiology Association and an advisor to the Tanzanian Medical Student Association. When I first spoke to him, he told me after I gave him the specs that based on its design specifications and reusability, I would choose ReCore over a metal reusable or plastic disposable device. And we're really happy that he was so excited about our idea and enough to join our advisor team. At this point, I'm gonna give it over to David, my partner, and I'll keep sharing my screen, but he can take you through the next steps that we're going forward and in developing this.
All right, excellent. Marley, thank you very much. So let's take a minute to talk about our timeline and our future plans. Since our founding in November 2019, we've been fortunate to be selected as finalists for this competition and to be awarded seed funding from 2 grants at Yale. With this money in hand, we've designed and created multiple prototypes. Next, we plan to transition from 3D printing to injection mold prototyping with concurrent product evaluation and legal considerations, including IP and regulatory approval, most likely as a 510(k) exempt Class 1 device with substantial equivalence to currently legally marketed devices. We are also in discussion with a contract manufacturing and design firm about professional phase 3 prototyping and designing for manufacturing. On the prototyping front, we're lucky that our mechanical engineer has his own 3D printing lab in-house, quite literally in his house. And this has allowed us to make large strides in phase 1 of our prototyping plan, even in the face of the coronavirus pandemic. We are rapidly iterating our design and are in the process of exploring novel design mechanisms to reduce device complexity and even further lower costs. Now, as mentioned earlier, we've generated a good amount of support across Yale since the first round of this competition and have made important strides, all while remaining under budget. At this juncture, we estimate that we need an additional $30,000 to cover the cost of injection mold prototyping and product performance evaluation. We're currently in the process of seeking additional grant funding and potentially private investment. Now, as a word of closing, we've talked about a major global barrier to the spread of interventional radiology and thus access to appropriate healthcare. This issue formed the foundation of RECOR's mission, pursuit of innovation in order to deliver value and ensure access to healthcare of the highest quality on a truly global scale. Thank you very much, and we look forward to your questions.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that. And yes, let's go ahead and open it up to our judges. Any questions for the team?
Let me just go ahead then. It's Fabian here. Great presentation, guys. Do you think there's any way that commercial needle providers could stop you from using their needles? And if so, would there be a way for you to develop your own needle, or would that be too complex?
Definitely developing our own needle. It's something we learned a lot about in this space. I originally thought maybe needles were an off-the-shelf thing. Maybe they are for hypodermic needles, but not for biopsy needles. And we have designed our own needle and are in contact with needle suppliers to make them.
Hey, this is Andrew. Great presentation, guys. Just a quick question. What did you envision the sterilization process for the handle to be? Because certain sites may have not access to certain sterilization resources.
Right, so we're currently in contact with a design firm to learn more about the properties of different thermoplastics. Obviously, for an application such as this, ethylene oxide would be ideal, but as you mentioned, a lot of these earlier stage programs will only have access to steam and pressure autoclaving. So we do want to optimize for steam and pressure autoclaving just to be as inclusive with our product as possible.
And I'll add the models that we've shown here are based on a thermoplastic that can be steam autoclaved.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, it's Miles Conrad. The Temno, I guess the competitor, is the disposable Temno that you mentioned was really expensive. It looks and feels like it costs about $2. So my question is, are there other competitors that are producing such a biopsy gun similar to Temno that are potentially cheaper and are being marketed anywhere?
So this is one of the cheapest quotes. A lot of the ones that you see in the US are going to be more expensive. There is one that's cheaper, the Super Core, and it's not that much cheaper. You still have to pay for an introducer needle, and so basically you still have to basically pay for the needle. So there's no way that just buying a biopsy needle is ever, you can't make a disposable device that's cheaper than just buying the needle itself, just from a perspective of looking at the material cost. So that they probably could offer these cheaper. I don't know that the proprietary markup they have on them. Their production cost is probably around what you mentioned, $2 or $3, I would guess, but the overall cost to produce this device is going to be a lot higher than the manufacturing cost. So unless they're willing to sell it below cost, then no, it wouldn't be on the long term competitive with a reusable device. The reusable device outpaces disposable devices by a long shot, either reusable device, the Bard Magnum or our device. And more cost-efficient programs, I think, recognize that and are tending to use the reusable devices.
Yeah, I can add something to that also. So we actually ordered some biopsy guns from China through Alibaba for Tanzania, and they were actually under $10 per device, but they were horrible. It was just really bad quality. They kept falling apart, and also they actually were not coaxial, even though they were marketed as such, but you couldn't put them through another needle because of the firing mechanism.
It's Susan. I have a question. Are there other like plastic products that are reusable, like examples of them, and how long they last? I'm just not familiar with that many reusable things. Like how many times can you use it or get it sterilized before it might need to be changed?
That's a great question. That's going to be one of the main focuses of our evaluation phase for the thermoplastic. We're going to fire it, 1,000 times and autoclave it 1,000 times. But reusable plastics are present in surgical devices, surgical handles, and other things of that nature. The amount of time it would take, to degrade based on having a moving part mechanism, that's something that we don't know the exact answer to. But we can basically adjust this cost model so that if it fires for a shorter number of times, basically the upfront cost can be lower, and we still achieve the same long run cost savings.
Can you explain that? How would upfront costs be lower?
So the sale price of the base device, that basically so the more expensive the base device is, the longer it's going to take to amortize or spread the cost of that device over the number of biopsies that it's capable of providing. So if it's a lower priced base or handle, it only has to provide a fewer number of biopsies before you actually get a cost saving. So within a range, depending on the results of our trial in testing the biopsy and the reusability, we can adjust that final sale price to make it still profitable for any institution that uses it.
This is something that we did in one of those earlier graphs where the cost of the base was either $50 or $250, and we showed that the time to recoup that cost varied between 4 to 14 procedures respectively. So the overall goal here is to deliver them a per procedure cost that's lower than what's currently available at quality on the market. And we can do that by varying the base cost.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Pratik Shukla here. Nice presentation, both of you guys. Question, you said you needed $30,000 to get to your next step. Can you tell me how the $30,000 is going to be allocated? Because I know you talked about, legal fees, you've talked about prototyping fees, and $30,000 seems like a very small amount. I know even for a patent, if you do a lot of the work yourself, you can be put in 50,000 pretty easily. So how are you gonna allocate the $30,000 that you guys are asking from another investor?
Sure. So the 30,000 is not going to be our total cost. That's just to get us to basically the next stage. And it's really about a conversation between us and the contract design and manufacturing firm that we're talking to. We're talking to a particular one called Synectic. They're in Connecticut. And they absolutely understand the development model for a startup like us with low initial funding. And they work kind of iteratively back and forth. So if you have a lot of money, if we had $200,000, we could give them just come in with the idea itself alone, and then they would take it through the whole process. So the more we're able to do on our own with our own mechanical engineering, basically the more of that price we're going to cut off. So if we're able to take this through kind of this prototyping phase 2, as we call it, where we develop with materials that are more final, what we'd expect the final product to have, and evaluate them on our own. Moving from this phase to them taking it to the final phase is going to be much less costly, between $60,000 and $80,000 up to $100,000 that we've quoted here in our budget, versus starting back here, which is going to be double the cost. So we're hoping basically to use this $30,000 as a cheaper way to bridge us to working with this contract design manufacturer.
Have you allocated any money to patent filing?
Yeah, so here the legal and IP development, we allocated $10,000. I think it could definitely be more than that. This is a quote that I got from a patent lawyer a long time ago, and it didn't have all the information we have now. But this is something that we expect to do kind of more longitudinal, and based on the results of our designs. So we definitely are going to need more than 30,000. That's just to support us in the next phase and in the short term.
Have you filed a provisional patent at least yet, or multiple provisional patents based on the different parts you have?
No, we have. So we're really in an iterative portion of the design, and we have what we think is an innovative design that would qualify for our patent. Basically, we don't believe that just creating the device with the same mechanism as a traditional biopsy device with a different material is going to qualify us for IP protection just around that. It would qualify us for, sorry, yeah?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so we have an innovation based on it's totally different than any other biopsy gun on the market that we think will reduce the part count and reduce cost even further. That we think is probably protectable if we can get it to work. If we can't, then basically it's a very similar design to a traditional biopsy gun, which we have already created in our prototyping. But what we're trying to do is create a protectable innovation that actually that allows us to manufacture at an even lower cost than any other device in the market.
Gotcha. So if you do have an idea, the one small piece of advice I can give you guys is, even if it's not completely down to every bolt and nut, and you have some idea that might be, you think can be protected in the future, provisional patent costs $151, and you can, with the drawings you've shown are more than sufficient for, and you can build on a provisional. The one thing I would recommend is definitely look into that. A really good resource is the Biodesign textbook from Stanford. I know I read that almost cover to cover when I was doing something like this when I was a resident. And I would really learn everything you can learn about provisional patents. It's easy to learn, it's very cheap to do, and it protects you in the long run.
Right. We're very interested in getting that early filing date for when we do go and file a full patent. But thank you. Thank you very much.
You say the name of the book? What was the book again?
It's just called Biodesign.
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Well, thanks, guys. We're already a couple of minutes over, but excellent Q&A. And this will now begin our judging portion. So for all of our judges, you'll be going off. Please stay signed in, but you'll be joining a Zoom room with Neil, who should have contacted you previously. Please speak up if any of this is confusing. At this point, I'm going to shamelessly plug the Biodesign and Innovation Committee. But again, for the next 10 minutes, our judges will be deliberating amongst themselves. There's a rubric we provided them, and they will be ultimately determining who the winner of this year's biodesign competition is going to be. So again, thank you, and we'll see you in just a few minutes, judges. And for everyone else that is still here with me, what we'll do is talk just a little bit about who we are and what we do, again, just because we have you all here. So again, we are the MSC Biodesign and Innovation Committee. We're the folks who put on the biodesign competition. Formerly, this was the hackathon. Our goal really is to expose, educate, challenge, and collaborate with medical students across the spectrum. We really do like to expose medical students early in their training to IR, and especially foster excitement for innovation. In terms of education, our goal essentially is to teach students the basics of biodesign, at the very least, get everyone thinking like an innovator. In terms of challenge, we like providing opportunities that gets medical students to really begin thinking about solving clinical problems. And I think something like a biodesign competition is exactly that, so challenging folks to come up with great innovation in the global health space. And finally, collaboration with other folks within our ecosystem, and especially mentorship within the IR space. Moving on, so Biodesign Competition is our marquee event for the year, but in terms of the future, our plan had been this year to do it at SIR in Seattle, but for obvious reasons, we're online. In future years, though, that is our hope to return to the actual SIR annual meeting. Additionally, we are hoping to expand our outreach to engineering students, as well as additional international groups in coming years. Other things that we additionally do as well are regular webinar series. So if you're new to the Biodesign and Innovation Committee, or this is the first bit of content you've seen from us, keep in mind we do have a webinar series frequently featuring obviously interventional radiologists as well as innovators, and really folks from across the device development spectrum. So not only discussing kind of intro to biodesign, but additionally career highlights and again, new technologies in the device development space. Great. And then beyond that, we are working as well on an innovations in IR website section. That would be within RFS. And ultimately, our goal is to basically summarize the current state of innovation in IR and really kind of get a nice forum going for current innovations as well. Great. And then just a couple other items, in terms of our committee, we mentioned again that, we had really hoped to put together a few different things for SIR in Seattle this year. And ultimately, though, we are able to build on what we have put together, and we are working on a curriculum for medical student symposiums. So if that's something you're working on, we can certainly help you out with curriculum from the biodesign folks. And then beyond that, we do our best to collaborate with everyone else in the RFS. And again, getting back to that website that we are working on to really build out a nice, robust RFS research and innovation committee. Great. So really, our goal is to get as many medical students involved as we possibly can. And this is just a nice little graphic reminding ourselves of the biodesign process, but ultimately, important to remember that we are the Biodesign and Innovation Committee within the Medical Student Council at SIR. If you're interested in getting involved, joining the committee, or really just working on a project or two, we're absolutely always happy to involve as many people as we can. So that is my shameless plug for our committee. And now we're going to wait just a few more minutes, about 5 or so, for our judges to continue deliberating. So right now that means that our judges are in a separate Zoom room. They do have a rubric that they are reviewing, and they will let me know in just a few minutes. So I will be back with everyone in about 4 minutes. Please stay with us, and we'll be announcing again the winners very shortly. Thank you. So for everyone still with us, we'll be back in just a couple more minutes. We are, again, just still waiting for our judges to determine who our final winner will be for our biodesign competition. So just another couple of minutes. Thanks, everyone. And just an update everyone, the judges are still reviewing the entries right now. So just another minute or two and we will have an answer back from them. Thank you, everyone. All right, everyone, just another update. The judges are still deliberating. They're trying to figure out who they'd like to. This is the winner, so we're giving them about 2 more minutes, and then I will be right back with everyone with our final winners for 2020. Thanks, everybody. All right, everyone. And as we all slowly get back, we do have a winner here. So with great pleasure, I'd like to announce that our winner for the 2020 Biodesign Competition is going to be Albany Medical College. So congratulations, Albany Medical College. Absolutely good work. I was going to say Levigo, but I'm realizing you guys have already changed your name and somehow I've already forgotten the name, but absolutely congratulations. Just while we're here, I'd like to just take a couple of minutes to also recognize everyone else that put work into this year, especially everyone involved with SIR, Biodesign Innovation Committee, and really all of our submissions were absolutely fantastic this year. Especially both of our finalists, Albany and Yale, you guys were both fantastic. But once again, congratulations to Albany Medical College. Thanks, guys. This was a really fantastic submission. And thank you to all of our judges for coming out tonight. Really appreciate everyone's time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Damian, for putting this together. I'm not sure if people are still on, but great job to you, Saksham and Fred. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.